Welcome to Spirit Pig. This is the show that explores how to live a fulfilled life. I'm Duncan CJ, and in this episode I talked to Duncan Goose about putting everything on the line for what you believe in, breaking down overwhelming and large tasks into little steps, what Duncan's 2-year trip around the world taught him about humanity and the kindness of strangers, plus the power of hard work, passion and belief. Coming up right now in Spirit Pig. Enjoy. Today I'm talking to Duncan Goose, and now Duncan spent 2 years motorbiking around the world, surviving earthquakes, hurricanes, shootings, and I think even an attempted kidnapping I read. And he's since gone on to found Global Ethics Limited, and he is the main man behind the One Difference brand, which has raised over £10 million for humanitarian projects and has changed 2.6 million lives worldwide. Duncan, thank you so much for giving up your afternoon and talking to me today.
No, it's my pleasure.
Now, I saw you speak at a TED Talk, and your story definitely and the journey really caught my interest, and it was absolutely incredible, like the whole where it's come from. And can I maybe just ask? December the 15th, 2003 was a key day in your life. That was a big turning point. Could you maybe just describe why exactly and why that day was such a big day for you?
Well, actually, it was a big day for the world, strangely enough, because it was the day that Saddam Hussein had been captured, and or I think it was captured maybe the day before, but it was the day it was in all the news and in all print media. So, like every newspaper you picked up, there was just page after page after page of coverage about him being taken out of this underground cavern that he'd been hiding in, sort of very dishevelled. But I bought a newspaper that day, and I was like everybody else reading through it. But then towards the back of it, there was just this photograph of a young girl sat in fairly squalid, muddy conditions by a sort of very rusting tap, which had a padlock on it. And the sort of byline on the photograph was just waiting for water in Kibera. And that really kind of like got my attention, much more so than the Saddam Hussein story. Partly because of some stuff that happened when I was out motorbiking around the world, but also because of something else that I'd kind of heard about in terms of the global water issue. So yeah, that was a pretty poignant day for me.
And did that, because there was that, and then there was also a story when you were sitting in a pub with other like marketing people, and then this idea of the issue of like the lack of water around the world. Like, what happened? So you saw that story, and what came first out of those two things?
Do you know, I can't actually remember which way around it happened, strangely enough. It was so long ago. But the pub conversation was, we were in, a bunch of us were in Soho in London, watching the Grand National that day. And one of my friends, a guy called Simon Devonshire, said, did I know that there was 1 billion people in the world that didn't have access to clean water? And I was just like, no, I didn't. But I've seen that, when I was out of my motorbike travels, I kind of had a few experiences that made me understand the value of water and the impact lack of clean water has on people. And as a bunch of, as you say, sort of slightly boozed up marketeers, he said, well, why don't we create this water brand and give all the profits away? And that was really the sort of how it started, I suppose. And then the following day, everybody went back to work as normal and with hangovers, and nobody did anything. But I think for me, it was that trigger point. It was the thing that resonated more, perhaps, with me because I'd had first-hand experience of that. So yeah. And
there's this, it's unbelievable because rather than just, like you said, just talking about it and going back to your normal life. I mean, you put everything on the line. As in, I think you remortgaged your house. This was the beginning of this huge, crazy journey. I mean, and I think even at one stage, your parents were sending you food packages because you went from this obviously a good, well-paid job to back to real basics and just putting everything on the line. That must have been a pretty scary but maybe exciting time.
It's
crazy. I don't know. I don't know
crazy.
What that is.
It's difficult to explain when you feel so compelled to do something, so driven to do something, you become quite blinkered, I suppose, in trying to achieve whatever that is, and you just keep going and going and going to get where you need to go. And I think for me, partly the motorbiking around the world thing, I understood you have to go through the hard bits as well as the good bits. But it's always about just keep plodding on, and just get over every single obstacle that gets in your way. And you're right, and I did, and I used up all the savings that I had to start this crazy bottled water company that would give all its profits away. And then when I'd gone through all of those, I remortgaged my house, and then when I used up that money, I had sort of friends and family helping me out. And getting food parcels when you're in your 30s is it's quite a tough thing to adjust to, but it was an obsession. And I think the biggest part of it for me was that I was there in this knowledge that there were 1 billion people in the world that didn't have access to clean water, that 2 million people were dying every single year from contaminated water, and people spent an average of 4 or 5 hours a day walking to collect water. So kind of, how dare I complain about the quality of life that I had? I had clothes and I had a small flat in London. It's like my life really wasn't that bad. So just keep pushing and pushing is the thing you have to do, and it's just the way it goes.
Because you had, you said 1 billion people without clean water. Did you find that having a reason or a why that was so much bigger than you and yourself, did that help, a massive driving force in terms of the motivation, that it wasn't something, which was selfish, it was something which was this huge, crazy task, but because it was so much bigger than you, did that help in the tough times quite a lot?
Yeah, always. And it's the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning is that, it's like if I can do something good today, if I can stop one child from dying from contaminated water, or get one child to go to school rather than walking 4 or 5 hours to get water, then that's a fantastic success. And that was really why the brand that we produced was called One. It was about changing lives one person, one day at a time. So for me, we count success down to lives changed. How many lives changed? As you said, we've changed over 2.6 million. I think it's a bit more than that now, but yeah, certainly in the millions. And that was because I was just obsessive about trying to do something that would affect people.
And I love that idea of that just one, because when you have those figures like 1 billion people or 2 million people dying every year because of water issues, because those numbers are so huge, then it's almost like it's so big, then it's what can I do? But by bringing it back just to one person, if you can just focus on just one person today, or that's your goal, then job done. I like that, because it almost removes that huge barrier of entry where looking around, we can all make a difference, rather than just thinking 800 million. I mean, I can't do anything about that, so you almost don't even start.
Yeah, and I think I'd learned that really from when I motorbiked around the world. When I started off, I said to people sort of half jokingly, I was going to ride around, and this is way before you and McGregor did it, and certainly without their kind of funding and support. But I said that to people, and some people were like, "Oh, great, go and do that," and other people were quite skeptical about it and said, "Well, you'll never achieve it." And I think for me, I started with the big vision, which was to ride a motorbike around the world. But then it was about getting up every single day and riding a bit further, and I loved that. That was part of the process. And I think the same thing about the bottled water company was, as you said, there's 1 billion people out there. I can't change that. There's nothing I can do to change that, but I can change one person's life. And if I can change one, I can change two. And if I could change two, I could change a family. And if I could change a family, I could change a community. So all these little incremental steps are the things that get you all the way around the world, or closer to 1 billion people having access to water.
That's amazing, and that's what you just said there. Really closely parallels. I was talking last week to. Have you come across Alistair Humphreys before?
No.
He's an adventurer. He was like National Geographic, like Explorer of the Year,
Okay.
and he did a similar sort of thing when he was saying so many people. He cycled around the world, and so many people said, "Oh, you can't do it, you can't do it." But his thinking was, if I can cycle to the local village, okay, then if I can cycle to the next town, okay, if I can cycle to the end of England, and it's just a crazy huge adventure like that seems insurmountable, but it's actually just hundreds of little adventures put together where it's just like
Yeah.
just each step. And so I guess it's the whole like look after the pennies and the pounds look after themselves. Like, just taking it one step at a time. And like that, a lot of people were saying you can't do it, you can't do it. But just taking those baby steps, and before you realize it, you've actually made a huge difference in whatever, in an adventurer, or in helping people. And I think that's really, really interesting to hear it again, because this is two people who, yourself and Alistair, who have both achieved these crazy things, and you both reiterated it, that it's just baby steps, one step at a time.
Yeah, I think that's like life. You can't live life in one day. You've got to be here for hopefully 70, 80 years or something. So, but yeah, it's just every day is different, but it's always working towards the same goal. And there's a thing about you can't. How do you eat an elephant? And it's like one bite at a time or something like that. It's those kind of sentiments. So, yeah.
I love that, and that's awesome. And you mentioned a couple of times about this trip around the world, and sorry, I'm going to quote you, but it's a quote. It's a quote. It's a quote which I read, and actually I loved. You said, "I was fortunate to have people all around the world take me under their wing when things went wrong, as they sometimes did, and I learned a lot about humanity and about the kindness of strangers." Can you maybe just elaborate on that? Did you find that people and are generally like helpful and kind and generous, or what was your experiences of just coming across these people who they've got no reason to help you, they're not friends, they're not family, but did you find a kind and helpful? I don't know.
Yeah, I think this was. I've actually just got chills while you said that. I think it was possibly the greatest revelation for me. So up until that point, I'd been living in London, and I lived in a street of terraced houses, and I didn't really know more than like one neighbour each side of a street that was probably like 100 houses or something like that, and yet when you step outside this world, and or not this world, this country, suddenly the level of interest that people have in you and wanting to help you is it's mind blowing. So I'll give you a couple of examples of that, if I may.
Yeah,
The first one was that I started in the east coast of Canada in Nova Scotia, and originally had planned to sort of ride from Nova Scotia down to America, and I didn't, because I met some guy in a bar one night, and he said, "Oh, you should go to Banff and Jasper," which is on the west coast or towards the west coast of Canada. So I ended up riding across Canada to start with. But a couple of weeks into that trip, I hit a deer early in the morning, about 50, 60 miles an hour, and I ended up down the ditch, and the deer was dead, and the bike was a complete mess. And it was not a great start to what was going to be a around the world trip. But the ambulance crew that picked me up and the police were phenomenal. The nearest hospital was an hour's drive away, so it was quite remote where I was. But this community just came round me, when they found out he was this like foreign guy who'd hit a deer and come off his bike and it was a mess. And they patched my motorbike up with skidoo parts, because there was no motorbike shop where I was, but there were skidoos. And they sort of stitched all my clothing back together, and they offered me a cottage to stay, and people took me out to ice hockey games when I was recuperating, and it was just the most. It was like having this family around you that they were just there, and it was an amazing and very humbling experience. And then the other one was that I was motorbiking through Pakistan from Amritsar on the Indian border, right up in the north, down to Iran, and all of the way through Pakistan, nobody would let me pay for food. It was just amazing, and I just don't know where that kind of level of hospitality comes from. And there was a guy there that fixed my motorbike for me, because I'd had some problems with it. And it was just, if anybody listening to this picks out anything from anything that we talk about, it would be just go out into the world and just meet people, because it's a phenomenal place, and it's just full of some incredibly generous people.
That's amazing. Thank you. I love that. As in I've done a little bit of traveling, and I can just back up what you're saying. the people and the experiences that and the things you learn, I think, through traveling is I learned more in through traveling than I did probably all of my schooling, university put together. As in more about yourself, more about the world, more about people. Just it's unbelievable. Yeah, as in those were awesome stories. Thank you. um, and I heard a quote yesterday from Tony Robbins. It was on Twitter, and it said, "What will make you fulfilled is to grow and to give." And do you feel, obviously, you've devoted so much of your life to giving? Do you feel that giving is really closely linked with your personal like happiness, human happiness, fulfillment? This idea of doing something for something else. I mean, you just mentioned about the stories of other people helping you, but you helping other people. How's that kind of made you feel?
That's a really interesting question. I think part of it is that we all have this obligation to help other people, whether that's your next door neighbour Jim, who lives next door to me, who's 85 and a widower, who we sort of adopted, and my kids have adopted him as a grandparent. We kind of keep an eye on him. So, out to the wider world. About, I was taking my kids to school this morning, and we sort of ran into this lady who was having some problems with her children, and we bundled all them into the car, and we took them home. And I think you just have this innate thing about helping people. It's about what humanity is about, and all this, crap that's going on with ISIS and everything else is the complete antithesis of that. But I think generally people in the world are here to support other people. It's not all about getting your agenda across or making as much money as you possibly can. It's just about making the world a slightly better place. And I think I'm very privileged to have fallen into this sort of journey that has happened with a motorbike trip that opened my eyes in one sense, to having a background in marketing, to having this pub conversation, to whether you call this synchronicity or what, I don't know, but I think that's the big thing for me is that we all have a duty of care to the world and to people, and I'm just really privileged to have a really unique way of being involved in that, I suppose, and I feel very fulfilled, blessed, whatever you want to call it, to be able to do that. So yes, I have an incredibly amazing life from that perspective.
Incredible. And would you say that because now, like, raising 10 million, I mean, what really excites me is the idea of an idea, and it's just an idea, but then that idea taking form and then manifesting and actually creating change. Because what does it feel like to have just an idea which you came up with, to then £10 million later changing 2.5 million lives? Like, what does that feel like? As in, can you? What kind of feeling does that get, like? Or is it? Are you thinking we're not even close to job done? It's just we're not even.
Yeah.
We got a long way to go. Or
yeah, I think what we've done is amazing, and I think that we've done it in some challenging circumstances, not least because of the sort of years of the recession, which we, like everybody, took an absolute pounding. But we're always looking forwards. I sort of used to say that one was really a legacy project. It would never be achieved in my lifetime. We would never get to this point of eradicating global water scarcity. But I've changed my view on that. And I think we can do it. And I think you can do it collaboratively. And that's the project that we're sort of working on now, is about how do you bring people together? How do you bring organizations together? How do you bring governments together? How do you bring civil society together? How do you bring communities together and say, look, we know we can change this. We've just got to get everybody on the same agenda. And I think for me, it's like the 10 million and the couple of million lives that we've changed are incredibly amazing things to have done. But I want to get to the end. I want to be a really old man and say to my kids, look, we nailed that. We eradicated water scarcity. Not me by myself, but me in collaboration with millions of other people who just said, this is wrong. We should sort this out, and we can do it, and let's get on and sort it.
That's awesome. Can you just? I think the microphone is just rubbing against your jumper.
Sorry.
So if you just take those headphones out, we'll do it without them, I think.
Okay.
That's awesome. And would you say that? Oh, I just put my mic down. Would you say that on a personal level, what have been sort of some of the some of the biggest learnings which you've got out of this whole experience? Have there any stand out? You mentioned obviously that the world is generally like a good place and kind, but have you on a personal level learned like a lot about yourself or?
Yeah, there are so many lessons that you could take out of a journey like creating a water brand and then giving the profits away. The starting point is people said it was impossible to do it, and it is really freaking difficult. Trying to run a business that gives money away is not easy. But I think there will always be obstacles. The game will always change. It will be different year after year after year, and it's about being accepting of that and not taking it as a kind of personal. The world doesn't play today the way it played yesterday, kind of thing. It just changes, and sometimes we move the goalposts, and sometimes somebody else does.
Yeah.
And that can be really hard to take sometimes. But you've always got to go forward. You've got to say, what is the learning from this experience? And how do we then apply it to the next one? And we had this recently. We pitched for a massive piece of business, and everybody from like the low people to the CEO was involved in the company, and all of the vibes were like massively positive, and we didn't win it, and the team were absolutely devastated by it. And there were a couple of reasons that we didn't win it, which were fair and unfair, but it was their decision. And it's like you could sit and mope around about that, or you could say, let's take these learnings and let's apply them. That's exactly what we've done. And in the space of a month, we've been out and we've completely rethought some of the learnings that came out of that. And we're now having very different conversations with people. So, yeah, it's about, you've always got to go forward. You've always got to be prepared to change and adapt and evolve and just, take the learnings with you.
Just go, yeah.
You have to.
I know.
You can't stop.
Absolutely. And what advice would you give to someone who's listening to you and listening to your story and they're massively inspired and they're reared up, they want to make a difference, they want to do something positive, but like, where does one even begin? Like, is it about the similar way you have an idea and then you just run with it, or would you recommend people, I don't know, I mean, do you now that you've achieved like this, I mean, I'm sure people come to you for advice, like charities, because you've obviously got a charity. I think you're in the top 2 or 3% of charities in terms of actually in the UK in terms of the amount of money they give away. So you're obviously an example of a charity which has worked and been hugely successful. Like, what are some of the keys to that? Is that just having a great team, surrounding yourself with the right people, having just that go attitude, or is there some sort of secret sauce that I
wish there was a secret sauce, but no, I haven't found it. I haven't found it yet. Yeah, I think it's a lot of things. It's about coming up with an idea about what you want to do and the thing that you want to try and achieve, and then I think it's being really disciplined and just going towards it as fast as you possibly can. And I think that everybody has ideas, and people say, "Oh, I don't know what I want to do." It doesn't. Everybody has an idea. And sometimes it takes a while for those ideas to germinate and formulate and be brought to life. But if you really believe in something and you're passionate about it, it will become reality. It might not always be exactly what you thought it was going to be, but it will. And I think the best thing you can do is just work your backside off. I always say to people when they do come and talk to me, I said, just be prepared to give up first 2 years of your life, every weekend, 20 hours a day, and be prepared to lose everything. And if you can do that, then you've got a fighting chance of getting really long way down the road.
That last phrase when you said be prepared to lose everything, because what was interesting is that it's not, the risk is, I mean, obviously it seems like a huge risk, but you said yourself that worst case scenario, you can always get a job. Like, as in if you back yourself and you've got the confidence knowing that, okay, yes, I could lose everything, but worst case scenario, I could go in, I could write up a CV, I could get a job. I back myself enough to be able to know that I can do that. So the risk is, like, I don't know, a lot of ego, I guess, and being prepared just to slog it out and not live up to the standard which maybe you're used to, but knowing that you've got that confidence, knowing that you're never going to go hungry, you can always back yourself to go and get a job, like, if needs be. I think that gives a certain level of freedom as well, which is quite exciting. Knowing that, hey, I am going to be okay. Worst case scenario, I just have to bow my head a little bit, maybe go a little bit down the career ladder, and then just start again. But is that so much of a risk? Like, I think I'm always just go for it, guys.
No, I absolutely agree. I think you get very few chances in life to follow your own dreams, and I think to be your own boss is one of the best things that you can ever do. Because you just set your own agenda. It's about how you want to do things and the way you want to work, and I think that is incredibly fulfilling as an experience. And it's just getting on and doing it. Just enjoy the passion and the excitement and the highs and lows and the triumphs and failures and everything. It's just like this whole like crazy kind of experience of doing it, but it's phenomenal. And if you can find something that will, change the world or change people's lives in some kind of small way, then I think that's just an added bit of icing on a very big cake.
That's awesome. And that leads me on to my last couple of speed round questions, which we finish up every interview with. Yeah. We've touched on a few things earlier, but if you had to summarise, like, what does a fulfilled life mean to you?
I think that it's probably about trying to do all those things that you want to do. And I certainly in my 20s and 30s, I would pretty much never say no to anything. I would always kind of have a go, and through that I had some amazing experiences of taking jobs that had been offered to me that I wouldn't otherwise have considered. I got flying licenses and God knows what else, and just have this very rich kind of life that I was so open to stuff that I just had so many amazing experiences. And I think the other part of it is about not having regrets, or certainly not having big regrets. And everybody kind of goes, oh, I can't do this, or what happens if I it doesn't work out? And it's like, have a go, just have a go, because when you get to your later years in life, if you look back and go, I wish I could have, it's too late. So, have no regrets and just go for the things that you want to try.
I love that. And what is one thing all our listeners can do today that will have a massive positive effect on their lives?
I'd just like them to sit here and go, if I could really do the biggest, the craziest thing, the life-changing thing that I really, really deep down in my heart want to do, what would it be? And just say it to yourself, and then just figure out how to start walking towards it. Just take that first step. If you want to go and climb Everest tomorrow, start with walking up a hill in the park and see how that feels.
Buy a pair of trainers.
Buy a pair of trainers, yeah.
Awesome. And are there any books or resources which have had a big impact on you?
I think the biggest book that had an impact on me was a book called Jupiter's Travels by a guy called Ted Simon, and he wrote it in the 1970s, and it was about his motorcycle journey around parts of the world, and it just hit my life at a moment in time. And it was that book that inspired me to sell everything I'd got and buy a motorbike and start riding it around the world. So on a personal one, that was always the one that I refer to.
Awesome. I love that, and I'm definitely going to be reading that. And last but not least, how can people find out more about you, stay in touch, follow your journey and the one difference?
If they go to our website, which is onedifference.org, that's one spelled O-N-E, onedifference.org, they can go on that and they can click through to Facebook or Twitter, or they can find me on there on Twitter as well if they want to do that. But I'm always happy. I have a kind of an open, this is going to maybe backfire, but I have a kind of an open come and have a coffee policy. So if anybody ever wants just to grab me for half an hour and talk about, I've got this really crazy idea, what do you think about it? Then I'm always up for a coffee.
It's gonna backfire if we're really popular. This podcast. if we're not popular, you're fine. You no one to call.
Well, there is another part to that actually, which is that another book that I read when I was away travelling was the Celestine Prophecy. I don't know if you've come across that.
I haven't read it. My father has been waxing lyrical, telling me to read it. So that's on my to-do list. It's on my reading list.
It's a good travelling book. It's very interesting. But one of the things that it talks about in that is that the people you meet always have a message for you, or something like that. And I think there is always this two-way street with people, and that's why I like having coffee with people. Because they may come to me with, I think about this as an idea, and actually I'll get something out of the experience as well. So it's a mutually beneficial experience.
Duncan, this has been one of my absolute favourite conversations. I've absolutely loved talking to you. It's been fascinating. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure. It's been great.
See you later.
Take care. Bye.